team building, and recruitment. Some of you have received a mail out from us, and it would have been sent by email this morning from myself, Suzanne, and we sent it, and it's all about the bird personality. And what I would like you to do is draw a line down the middle with 2 columns on each side. Draw a line horizontally, starting between the words aloof and conforming all the way across. Once you've done this, please circle the words that you feel best reflect who you are and what you're all about. I'll give you a minute or two to complete that. The whole point of doing the exercise is to understand your personality and understand the different personalities on your team and the different personalities that you need for your team. You can see from the slide we're now showing that it gives you an indication of the different personalities reflected by the different words you've circled. So you can be a dove, you can be a peacock, you can be an owl, or you can be an eagle. I'm just going to speak a little bit about what all that means. The dove is peaceful, the dove is people-oriented, loyal, friendly, hard-working, and a great team player, but tends to avoid change, confrontation, risk-taking, and assertiveness. The peacock's a very different personality. The peacock is showy. He loves talking, being the center of attention. They have passion, enthusiasm, and they're happy and optimistic. Peacocks can be accused of talking too much and aren't good with detail or time control. The owl, as you can imagine, is wise. The owl is logical, mathematically minded, methodical, and sometimes seen as a perfectionist. The owl can be slow to make decisions and inflexible if rules and logic say otherwise. They're not big risk takers, but they do love their details. The eagles, on the other hand, are bold and confident. They're dominant, stimulated by challenge, decisive and direct. They can be blunt, stubborn, can lose sight of the big picture, and can be insensitive to people's needs. Eagles are natural achievers. The important thing this exercise emphasizes is how critical it is that your team is comprised of individuals who reflect all of these different characteristics. No one can do it on their own. You have to have a team, and you all need different skills and different talents that you can bring to your team atmosphere and grow and build your businesses.
Okay, so the first thing you want to look at when you're creating your team is really defining what that team is. A lot of people will look at a sales team and say that they're a team working together. The definition of a team are people working together toward a specific goal. So sometimes you'll end up with maybe a sales team where all their incentives are independent of each other. So they're not really working towards the same goal. They're all doing the same thing but working towards their own goal. When you're building your team, you want to make sure that your team members are complementing each other's skills because they're on a team where they're working towards a specific goal where they need to work together to achieve that goal.
The team requirements reflect the skills and abilities. Personality is not something that you can screen on, but it's important to know about your team because the personalities that are in your team become the personality of the business. And the person at the top really creates the personality from the top down of what it's like to be part of that organization. It's really important to know the requirements of the position so that you understand the type of people you need to be successful in that. You want to set people up for success so that moving forward you can reach the goals that you desire. It's really important to build these into the job description. It's the first stage and the first touch point that you have with your future and potential candidates that will be the people on your team. So it's important to build that in and create the team as you go.
So this is one of my favorite quotes from Tina Fey. It's from Bossy Pants. Don't hire anyone you wouldn't run one into in the hallway at 3 in the morning. I always consider recruitment to be kind of like dating. You're basically getting work married to these people, so you want to spend as much time as possible. And also you want to ensure that you make the right decision. So the first thing we always encourage people to do is if you're going through an opportunity where you have a lot of work for a temporary amount of time, consider hiring a temporary worker. It gives you the opportunity to kind of look at what that person would look like in a work situation. It really gives you an opportunity to see what they'll do for you if they were hired on a permanent basis. Psychometric testing is kind of like a Myers-Briggs style test. It's something that we're going to get into in a little bit, but it tells you a little bit more about the candidate before you make that decision. We always encourage phone screens with all of your candidates that apply. A lot of people aren't very good at writing resumes, and sometimes being able to write a good resume isn't one of the requirements for the position. So we've definitely had some instances where talking to people on the phone has screened some people into a competition who eventually went on to get the position that would have been screened out based on their resume alone. We always encourage face-to-face interviews. Apparently it's a thing now that people try and skip that step, but that's the important part. That's, even after all of the other work that you've done, this is your first date with this person, and it's important for them and yourself to make a good impression here. And we always encourage people to pay attention to all of the interaction through the entire recruitment process. So if you are looking for somebody with good communication skills, they might be able to put together a great portfolio for you, but then you look at their email and the email that they're communicating with you isn't great. So what's going on there? Does the person actually have communication skills, or are they able to kind of pull it out when they need to? Something you want to pay attention to through the entire process.
Psychometric testing is not to be used as a screening tool, and I really should explain what we mean by that. We do testing here at Priority, and it's an online tool that we use. We send it out to the candidates, and they have to answer a series of questions that reflect different skills and abilities. It's more a tool to be used to help you understand the people that you're going to be working with and where there are opportunities to coach with them, and also opportunities for you to move forward with them and make sure they're the right fit for your team. It provides information about the candidate for relevance, and it gives you a total person snapshot. So you see how they would react in different situations. You see what their responses would be. You would see how they would approach different challenges within the workplace, and also you would learn more about their skills and weaknesses. It's not something to decide you don't want them on board. It's something that gives you the opportunity to coach and work with them on the person you decide you want as part of your group. It works very well, and we highly recommend it.
Okay, and then the next slide is just an example of the total person snapshot that we put together. So this is a very small component of a full report that we would put together for one of our recruits. What it's showing you here is, if you look at the top scale, diplomatic versus independent, what you're seeing there is somebody who might, from a personality standpoint, be very diplomatic, which means that it's possible that that person would maybe shy away from conflict in the interest of keeping team cohesion together. That doesn't necessarily mean that that person's going to do that in that scenario in a work situation. But what this will give you the opportunity to do is see, okay, this person has the propensity to be more diplomatic. So let's ask them a question in the interview about what they would do in that situation, or if they do need to be able to stand up for themselves in a meeting, what have they done in the past to prove that that's not going to be an issue in this specific position. So again, not a screening tool, but more of an opportunity for you to probe more on some of their behavioral competencies.
References are very important. We always encourage everyone to do the due diligence when they've hired a new employee. And it's really good to ask for people who have supervised their work because they can really explain to you what the person is like in the workplace and really think about what the role is in your organization and what you need to know about how they reacted in the organization they came from. It's also really good when you're talking to the references to be really clear about the position you're hiring for so they have a sense of what examples they had experienced that they could share with you with that person. It's also really good. In New Brunswick, we find people tend to be very nice, and they don't always want to talk about the negatives of what a candidate can be like. So instead, ask the reference, especially ones who have supervised their work, for how you think the individual could best be coached, where you could really develop them to become a person with their own leadership abilities within your organization. Developing the leadership skills of all your employees is a win-win for both sides.
So the next stage, once you've conducted the references and you've already made your decision to hire the person, you want to make sure you have a really good orientation or onboarding program. That first 6 months in the candidates, their first 6 months of work is called the uncertainty reduction period, and that's the period where the employee is kind of getting to know the organization and becoming comfortable with the role, and that's when most employees end up either quitting or deciding that this isn't a good fit for them. So it's really important for retention purposes to make sure that orientation period is as comfortable for both parties as possible. So one of the first things we encourage people to do, which should be a given but isn't always, is to be ready to receive the candidate on the first day. So make sure that you have their computer ready to go, they have a desk to sit at, they have all the tools they need to start doing their job. Introduce them to the team, make sure they know who it is they're supposed to be reporting to and what the rest of the organization, what the rest of the people on their team do for that team. Plan to be available or have their supervisor available for questions and training for the first week at least, if not more. They're not going to jump in. It's very unlikely that they'll jump in and just start doing things and be very confident and do things confidently right away. You really need to make sure that they have an opportunity and that they feel comfortable to ask questions when they need to. And one of the major things you want to do is make sure they have a full job description. Make sure they understand, where they fit in the organization, what their role does, and what's expected of them in that first 6 months. So we always recommend putting a professional development plan or a work plan together for them. Give them some 6-month goals so that when you come back after their probationary period to discuss how they're doing, if you feel like they're not quite performing as well, you're able to show them metrics based on things that you discussed in the first day or the first week. And there's really no surprises at that point.
Designing your orientation program is important. It's good to think about the different types of personalities you're hiring and understanding that not everyone thrives in a group environment. So although it can be nice to have activities that involve your whole team, it's also really nice to make sure that there's one-on-ones available. So you get to know employees in different environments. Good to have a mentor within the office for them, maybe who could offer one-on-one coffee times with them when they could discuss, find out more about what's happening in the workplace, understand how office protocol works. Team huddles are a great introduction to the whole group and a good way to find out what everybody on the team does and give a better understanding of the projects. An orientation project, so they have something to sink their teeth into, is always a good starting point. It's good for them to have time alone and also with the team so they can absorb the environment and get to be familiar and comfortable and really plan for their success and the team's success.
So we just have a couple of numbers here. This is from the Conference Board of Canada on the average cost per hire. So you're putting all of these things together to reduce turnover so that when you finally make your decision, you've invested the time and money into it and you don't have to do it again. According to Conference Board of Canada, the average cost per hire is 30% of the successful candidate's salary. And we've just kind of mapped out, and you can take a look at this later too, based on 20 candidates applying to your position, This is about how long it takes to get to the selection. So we say about 20 hours, and we've kind of mapped out how long that's going to take. That's not 20 hours in a row. That's 20 hours total while you're attempting to do your, manage your business. You're throwing 20 hours in here, and this isn't, so this is based on the availability of references, availability of candidates for interview. We have a timetable of what it takes for some people to hire an executive. So in an organization that's still doing regular operations, we kind of mapped out for them. It's going to take you about 2 months to do that. You're going to have to create all of those things, the job description, create the job ad, do the administration for posting things. You're going to have to be screening people, and so we've estimated that at about 2 months. And you really want to look at, the 20 hours that we had mentioned earlier. How much are you paying all of the people involved in that situation per hour? And once you've tallied that up, what does that come to as a final result? So when you do finally make your decision, take into account the time and money that was spent on making that decision, and make sure you do it well and do it right the first time. And so that's our presentation as it is right now. I think there are some questions that you guys had.
Yeah, do you guys have a guideline about how long a probation period can be? Can it be as long as 6 months? Are there any rules around that in the Labor Act?
It can be 6 months. We usually recommend approximately 3 months with the opportunity to extend it. So at the end of if you've done your due diligence and created a proper orientation program, you can extend the probationary period at the end of the period based on the candidate's performance. So if you feel like they weren't up to snuff, you can extend it longer.
And do you have any guidelines about how many of your own team members should be on the in-person interviews?
That's really dependent on the position and on the organization. We like to generally we like to not have more than 3. We find after 3 people on an interview panel, it is, that was the question, right? How many people on the panel? Mm-hmm. Yeah, after that it becomes a little bit intimidating for some people. For an executive level position, we fudge those rules a little bit because the board will want to meet with the candidate. But general rule of thumb, I wouldn't do more than 3 if you can avoid it.
Okay. It looks like we have a 3-part question. Firstly, how many interviews should you do in total? Are working interviews useful, and is it fair to ask a candidate to prepare a presentation or report to prove their skills?
I'm going to take some of that one because I'm very passionate about the interviews. I think that, here we always do 3 interviews within our office and then a final interview with whoever our client is that would be hiring the member of the team. So I think it's really important. The phone screen is the first one. We mentioned that briefly. Nowadays, you'll often find some resumes are very technical and you don't get a sense of what the person is like or what their skills and abilities are. And so it's really good, especially in those roles and in all others, to have a conversation with the person, to have a sense of who they are and what they're all about. We always make sure that more than one recruiter speaks to a person because we all find we get different responses as we're all different personalities ourselves. So it's very important in an organization to have more than one of your people reaching out to interview. Having said that, I'm going to move on to the next part. And it is fair to ask a candidate to prepare a presentation or report. We have many different requests. Sometimes it can be as a 20-minute to an hour-long presentation that people are asked to do. They're sometimes asked for some roles to create a press release, to send emails, so you can see how their different styles of communication work. Mm-hmm. We're in a time when communication has never been more important, and the different tools people use and how they use them to get to see how they manage that process can be very important because it's all what they do becomes part of the personality of your organization and how it's branded moving forward.
We have another question here from the audience. He asks, we have a lot of difficulty receiving resumes when we post an opening. Do you have any tips on how they can improve the number of applicants they receive if they can't perhaps afford to contact an agency if they're just a startup?
Right. That's a loaded question.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. It really depends on what the difficulty is finding those people. There's a lot of different reasons why people wouldn't be applying to the ad. Maybe it is a matter of, it's not getting to the right people. So that's, I guess, more on the marketing side of things really than HR, is finding out where are the candidates that you're looking for and where can you find most of them. So it's really good at that point, I think, if you're up at Planet Hatch or in one of those other areas, you might want to reach out to your network and say, where are you finding these people? And can you please share this with some of those people? We know that the first thing that we do when we launch a new competition is go through our database and find not only people who meet the criteria, but also people who might know somebody who meets that criteria.
And certainly using your social media, your digital media options and tools can work very well also. And, making sure that, your network and the team you do currently have, whether it's a team in a startup situation, maybe where there's more than one startup, share with them who you're looking for so that they can use it on their social media sites, because it's a great way to reach out to people in a more informal setting.
Absolutely. And then on the flip side of that, you want to kind of mesh your HR into your marketing as well. So what type of people are you looking for? Where are those people graduating from? Should you be doing things in those schools to receive those people? And is the issue not so much that your ad's not reaching the right people? Is it that people aren't interested in that specific position? So then you want to come back and look at your total compensation package. Are you offering enough salary? Are you offering benefits? What kind of reputation does your organization have as an employer? You really, if you're in an area, especially right now, where you're saying that the unemployment numbers are climbing, why are you having difficulty finding that person?
So you were talking about the importance of the in-person interview.
Mm-hmm.
What if you're hiring from far away? Can you guys speak to the effectiveness of teleconferencing tools and if they give you a good opportunity to get to know that person?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, do you want me to take that? Okay. So I used to do, and we still do it here. A lot of the recruitment we do here is local, so we do have the opportunity to meet with people in person. But we use Skype. We do phone interviews. Pretty much, it's physically possible to have a face-to-face meeting, even if it's over cam. So yes, I guess it's doable, and it's fairly easy nowadays to do that.
And think in terms of, remember that there's always different time zones. We do a fair number of interviews with people on the other end of the country, so you need to think about that 4 to 5 hour time difference and how you're going to plan when you're going to do it and that it works for both parties.